Hey there, movie lovers. This is just a quick little intro. We're giving you a special treat today. Lately, I have started recording without Danielle, but with one of our friends, a past guest, Lorne. Go check out our Clueless episode for the last time he was on the main pod. But Lorne and I have started a new project where we are going ahead and watching some old movies, some new movies, movies that one of us picks. And typically, so far, one of us tears it apart and the other one kind of defends it. But we've decided to go ahead and make this a Patreon exclusive. I'm doing a little bit of an effort where we would like to offset some of the costs of this little hobby of ours. Nothing big, but every little bit helps. So this is a taste of some of what you will get over there behind that paywall. You can also get at a certain tier, you can have us say your name, and at another tier, you can have us, get access to the all of the main pod as a video format uh, earlier than everything else. So if that's at all interesting to you, go to patreon.com/the letter N love with movies, just like our socials below and everywhere else that you might find us. And if you don't have any interest in doing that, no worries. We really greatly appreciate you listening to our main feed and just sharing us with each other. We like having that little bit of time with you and don't want to sound ungrateful for that by any means. So, in that case, just enjoy this conversation about Super Mario Brothers. Not that one, you'll see.
I guess, hello, movie lovers and patrons. Welcome back to. Did we decide guy love with movies? Or are we sticking to that? Or is it no girls allowed? What have we landed, Lorne?
I whatever title you want to go with, I'm on board. I
I'll,
am fully on board. I'm gonna hashtag it everywhere as soon as we settle on something. Promoting it all my channels.
all your channels, all the channels
Whatever
that
you
you
want
have,
to do
all the
with
ways.
all my followers. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, patrons. The first patron to message me on either Twitter or Instagram at Nick Loves Movies or our accounts for the main pod In Love with Movies and says, like, this should be the name of your Patreon with Lorne. We will just officially name it whatever that is. The first patron to message me with that'll become the new go-to answer. But welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for getting behind the paywall. You paid for the glorious content of Lorne and I's thoughts on movies that may or may not be good and liked by each or neither of us. So we're going to go ahead and get into one today. For those of you who are new, welcome. Go back if you haven't seen it in our main pod. Lorne and his better half join us to talk about Clueless. That's how Lorne got himself roped into doing this with me. You could also go back and watch our video on Avatar, because we watched Avatar 2 and Lorne liked it a lot more than I did. So if you want to hear more of those thoughts, go ahead and look into that as well. But today, Lorne, we're covering a movie that I think I liked probably more than you, and we'll get into the nostalgic reasons as to why that may or may not be the case. But remind our listeners, Lorne, what movie is it that we're covering today, since they've already clicked on the link?
It's Super Mario. Is it just called Super Mario Brothers? It's not called. The new one's called the Super Mario Brothers movie. This is just called Super Mario Brothers. Is that correct?
So that's a fantastic. So it is the 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie, based upon the video game characters, and loosely based on the video game characters, one could say. I think Lorne,
that'll be a central component of our discussion.
I think a main thing that one could say is. It's confusing, because I saw some places that said Super Mario Brothers, other places I saw Mario Brothers the motion picture, other places I saw just Mario Brothers. So
I think that might be like an international thing, the Mario Brothers the motion picture. I think it's called Super Mario Brothers.
I think you're right.
Box, it says Super Mario Brothers. On the box of the DVD, it says Super Mario Brothers.
See, you paid closer attention than I did when I brought this over to watch it at your house.
I did. I was paying every detail. It was like, policeman, show me I gave you all the clues. And I paid attention to each every one of those clues. I did.
So then with that, we might as well get into our individual love stories before we launch into just nitpicking the crap out of this movie. And some of them are not nits. But what's your history with this movie, Lorne? You had mentioned before we had started recording that you've now seen it twice. Is that correct?
Yes. I've seen it twice in total. I've probably seen bits and pieces of it on cable after I saw the whole thing one time.
Okay.
I did not see this in the theater. It came out when I was 13 to date stamp myself, age myself. It came out when I was 13. I did not see this in theaters. I don't know if I rented it or my parents rented it or I just saw it when it was on cable one time, and I saw it. I remember the Goomba slash Koopas dancing in the elevator, and did not remember anything else about this movie. And then I saw it last week with you.
I am pretty sure that Goomba's dance in the elevator was used in the trailer, so that might be the other reason that stuck out to you.
That might be why.
Yeah, so I think I'm the one who has more of a nostalgia with it because you only saw it the one time. I am pretty certain, if my memory serves me correctly, that I would have seen it originally, because this movie would have come out when I was around 6, so it would have ended up on movie channels probably the first time ever in my life when my family had movie channels, when we moved into our new house, and I was catching little bits and pieces and kept like missing major plot points. And the funny thing is, I'm sure I was confused watching this movie as a 7-year-old and convinced myself that it was going to make sense if I saw it from beginning to end. So eventually,
I wouldn't worry too much about missing plot points. I think the writers did that too.
I have a note in here somewhere that basically said this movie is a random series of conjoined action sequences and references to the video game that none of it really makes any sense tied together. But I thought it did, so I rented it, and then I can remember getting it multiple times on rental and trying to like make sense of it. I also have a first note of the ridiculousness of the science of this movie. I, as a 7-year-old, I think I fully bought into it. I was like, this is so cool. It makes complete sense that an asteroid hitting the Earth would have created 2 separate dimensions, and did not think any further than that.
I do like the thought of you like just renting this movie over and over again, or forcing your parents to, and like going over it and trying to make sense about, like, it was 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like, you're trying to just decipher this undecipherable monolith of a movie. It's just, I need to make sense of it. It's telling me something. I need to know what it's telling me.
There's a deeper meaning. They're gonna make a sequel. I have to understand it because they're gonna make a sequel. I saw that end credit scene.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, listeners, for those of you who have seen this, I'm sure know that this movie makes zero sense. It starts with and I had forgotten this. It's one of the first things I wrote down too. I forgot the just like ridiculous opening of this random cartoon thing, and it to me just rings of like instructional movies that we used to watch like in classes where they would try to explain the dinosaurs, but it was with like really crappy 1970s animation.
Okay, I'll be honest with you. We saw this less than a week ago. I don't remember that. Most of this movie is completely fluttered out of my brain.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
No.
That is amazing. I love that
like,
so
it
much.
felt like I was high when watching it, but I was not high. I was very sober.
You should have been. That would have made things way better.
It just seems like a cloudy dream.
Okay, so well then what's the first thing you do remember, or the first note that you have, Lorne?
Oh, are we gonna do like, or we're gonna just kind of like walk through?
Sure.
To do our best to walk through this movie. Okay. The first thing I remember is like, it's like the not the prequel, like the like when someone was a baby, there was an egg, there's a big egg, and someone dropped the egg off at a nunnery, and I believe there were 2 nuns that had it was like a scene out of like The Godfather or something. It was like the baptism scene from The Godfather, but 2 nuns were staring at an oversized novelty egg, I think.
Did you understand who that egg was?
Is that Bowser? The Koopa? Is that Yoshi?
Oh my god. Lorne, this is so perfect. This so perfectly encapsulates like everything that is the reason why this movie is just so ridiculous. The fact that you don't even like that you didn't track. So, okay, so that egg is Daisy.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Oh, she came from an egg.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Because, and this gets into like, are they people? Are they dinosaurs? clearly like they're people in, I don't know if you want to call it like Dinosaur Manhattan, Dyna Manhattan, or something like that. They're people, but they are people evolved from dinosaurs. So there's the weird scenes where like, what's her name? Like makes weird like snake movements, and Koopa like is able to kind of be a lizard sometimes. But they're also just like human beings. And so apparently they're so much like human beings that this Daisy character, having been born from an egg, grew up in regular Manhattan to never know that she was born from an egg, because I'm guessing the nuns apparently just didn't tell her, and lived her entire life being able to have no man who may have seen her alone, no interactions with her puberty situation, nothing tipped her off her entire life that she was not like other humans.
Did she? God, I really don't remember anything about this freaking movie.
This is so fantastic. This is gonna be you needing me to explain to you what happened, and that's fucking phenomenal.
Wait, so I knew she was like from Dino Hatton is what I think they call
okay,
it.
Dino Hatton. I didn't even catch they named it.
I'm referencing. Well, I don't know if they said that in the movie, but that's what they wanted it to. I read an article. So before we started here, I quickly read this article from The Guardian from 2018, which was kind of not quite like an oral history, but kind of like they interviewed a few people that were in the movie or involved with the making of the movie, and just kind of like what a disaster it was. And one of the concepts that they had was that this was Dino Hatton. They called it that, but I don't know if they ever actually officially referred to it as such. Really good article. I can send it your way.
You should, because we'll post it on Patreon too. Why not?
Yeah. But
so Dino Hatton, she you had a question about her coming from.
So
Dino
was
Hatton.
she? But was she at all like a dinosaur physically? Did they reveal that? Did she have a tail or something?
Nope.
What was the deal?
Nope. But
okay.
Neither does anyone else that we know of from Dino Hatton either.
Bowser had the tongue flicker, which
randomly.
Right?
Yep, randomly.
Okay.
What's her name had like she like shook her face like you sometimes see certain lizards do.
When you say what's her name, was that
the one played by
what the
Harry
British,
Potter's
Fiona Shaw.
Thank you. Yep. That's
what
I mean.
Yeah. She did something weird.
Lena, I think was her character's name. Lena.
Okay. Yeah.
But Daisy comes from an egg.
Yeah.
Comes from an egg.
All right. So before we like try to decipher this plot, this very sensical plot that reveals
totally science-based.
What it means to be human, and deals with where we all come from
and evolution. It really makes you question about
the nature of good and evil. Yeah. Just I guess like to back up and be like, what the fuck is this movie? How did it get approved? Like I read this article, and it did kind of clarify like how this kind of came together. And I think I don't know if this was like the first ever movie based on a video game. I think not, but it was very early in that.
Yeah, I don't think it was the first. I do think it was the first time that Nintendo allowed for any live action.
Yeah.
I can't remember now. I'd have to look it up, and I'll look it up while you're explaining more of your stuff. But it's either this or there was an animated Legend of Zelda movie that also did not go well.
I didn't know that.
And that's those two things combined are why we haven't had a Nintendo property movie in the 30 years since then, and that the latest new Chris Pratt-led Super Mario Brothers is the first time it's been there in 3 decades, because they were like so gun shy because of the bad experience from this.
I understand, the cash is there. Let's make a movie out of Super Mario Brothers. It's one of the biggest games ever. Mario's an iconic character, but like, there's no story there. There's not really the story is like less than paper thin, which for Hollywood isn't, automatically prohibitive to making a movie, but to like making a live action movie, I don't really understand how you could do that with the story as it is in the game. Like Metroid would be a really cool movie, except it would just be like an Alien ripoff. So actually, I don't know if there's a point there. I'm trying to think of other iconic Nintendo properties that could lend themselves better to movies, live action movies, anyway.
I mean, I don't know about Nintendo. I mean, obviously, there's other video games that would lend themselves
Sure.
better, but Nintendo. I mean, and
Yeah,
that's
I'm just
part.
thinking of the. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's part of I think the problem, right? Like most of them don't, especially not live action, like because the especially at this stage in video games, the story behind video games is not typically that deep.
No, not at all. No, there's no depth there.
And so that's I think part of the problem that you have, right? Like it's vaguely the concept that if you look at like the Super Mario Brothers movie games rather that actually, and this is so go past Jumpman, but instead go into like and Donkey Kong, because the Donkey Kong game was Mario's first appearance, but his name was Jumpman. And then you go into, you know, the actual Super Mario Brothers where you're fighting different people to get to Bowser and he's stolen Daisy. And that's the extent of it. There is a character who kidnaps Daisy.
Yes.
And that's basically the only thing that they took for this movie. And then I feel like they just were like, let's have the 90s vomit all over this because it is so very early 90s. It's this like pseudo grunge dystopian futuristic world, and it's just so very much the kind of things that was happening in movies at the time. But sorry, you were trying to actually make a point, and I think I directed us away from it.
Oh, I don't know. My point is lost, just like any remembrance I have of 90% of this movie. It's fine. I was gonna say though, like, so this movie was directed by Annabelle Jankel and Rocky Morton, who I had never heard of, but who created like the original Max Headroom. I don't know if you have any.
I don't think I got that deep. I had their names written down for our opening credits that I skipped right past that section of things. But
do you know Max Headroom?
I do, and that leans into my very late '80s, early '90s feel of this.
Yeah, like this movie was going to make no sense regardless. I think its connection to Mario is going to be tenuous at best, and I mean, I'm really like. I'm torn on it because it's like it is a very weird movie, and I appreciate that. And they use like real sets and real makeup, and all that is cool because that doesn't really get done very much.
A lot of it holds up. There's some very bad CG, but then most of the movie holds up because it was practical effects.
Yeah, I don't know about holds up, but it's something. But yeah, it's just. But at the same time, I was really kind of bored by most of it, to be totally honest. Like. There were a couple things that stuck out, like the elevator scene, and I guess we should talk about Dennis Hopper. Like,
oh my god,
we can talk about everybody in this. All right. Here's my thing with Dennis Hopper. I do think he is giving like the best performance in this movie, but I just feel like it's not as insane. It feels like relatively grounded. Surprisingly, it's considering it's Dennis Hopper playing King Koopa. And I just wanted something more kind of off the wall and just unhinged from him. That's what I was kind of expecting. And it felt, again, for Dennis Hopper doing this role, relatively grounded.
Interesting.
I don't know if you thought that.
No, I thought like he was. Well, I mean, he's chewing scenery and being Dennis Hopper. I mean, he doesn't seem. If you've seen the movie Speed, he seems like his villain in Speed to me, except make that guy a pseudo corporate president of this place. But he's like, and this is it's just there's so many things in this movie about everything that don't make sense. He's like got this weird thing where he seems to be maybe like a germaphobe. But then he, I guess, is sanitizing his hands in wax. I wrote that down. Like, what is that? He has some comment about.
Lord. I'll take your word for it.
I think it's just such a weird image that it always stood out to me from when I watched it when I was younger, and it probably also stood out because there's some part of my brain that was trying to make sense of it. But it's in his introduction scene. He like dips his hand in these like vats that look like boiling water, pulls them out, and they're clearly covered in wax. If you've ever done that with like candles when you were younger.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No explanation as to what that is, except there's a throwaway line about him, you know, thinking humans are disgusting and full of germs.
This
And
is
then
true.
another line, right? And then there's another line later where he's in a mud bath, but it's like white mud, and he says, I love mud because it's both dirty and clean at the same time." And
Okay.
that makes no sense. But I mean, like, there's these things that are to this character that just make zero sense. And then it's like, it seems like he's a king. He's usurped control from Daisy's dad. He is a dictator. And yet there's elect Koopa posters
Right.
all over the place.
Okay, I was going to ask about that. Like these Citizen Kane-esque, like elect Koopa posters, but who is he running against? When is this election? I'm assuming if there is an actual election, that it is very, very corrupt, and he's not going anywhere. Um,
No idea.
yeah,
And
but
I'm sorry, I just, there's more, because he's then this like business type, and I genuinely think there must have been a decision somewhere along the line where somebody was like, we're gonna make him like Trump. I really think this, because back in 1993, Trump was just a businessman. Nobody had ever thought about him running for president, and I'm sure someone was like, you know what would be the most ridiculous thing that could ever happen? Would be if Donald Trump was our president. And I
well,
think
that raises the question, tail wagging the dog, did Donald Trump see this movie and say, I identify with that guy, King Koopa, I like the cut of his jib.
I think we've come down to
Maybe
the
I
bottom
could
of
run
it.
for president someday.
That is where the idea got planted. Headcanon accepted.
Okay. Super Mario Brothers, the movie, caused Trump to get elected.
Yep. And now it has even more atrocious occurrences from the film than what we were already discussing.
I love it.
To make things worse, though, at the very first scene, the opening, when we first see Koopa, he like attacks Daisy's mom as she has delivered said baby to the nunnery, then comes back, and he's trying to, and again, they don't really explain this until just later on. Suddenly they say, oh, I need that shard because it's going to combine the worlds. When you're building the world at the beginning of the movie, that would have been a good thing to mention, where he said, like, where's the shard or something. No. He comes out of the, like, shadows, and then she screams and he gets buried in stuff, and, like, you vaguely look like you maybe are remembering some of this. Here's the thing that stuck out to me this time, because it's like, I've seen this movie so many times at this point, but it's been years since I'd last seen it. Mm-hmm. He's wearing some kind of like military general's uniform in that scene. So it would have been like when Daisy was a little egg before she was born. Assumingly, this is when he did his coup and took things over from her dad. And I'm assuming, again, there's like a lot of assumptions one has to make about the story for this movie. But I'm assuming that is what led to her mother like fleeing and delivering her to, some other freedom. Why would he be in a general's uniform? It feels like there's so many disparate things. Like somebody somewhere along the line had to make a costume for him to be that. They don't develop a general's uniform costume unless somebody gave them a script that said we're gonna need a general's costume. So was he always supposed to be a businessman? Was he supposed to originally be I'm so confused.
No, from what I understand, this movie was getting like rewritten like by the day, like the day every day they were rewriting pages on the script, and like the original script was like, I guess, much kind of grungier, and then the executives kind of hated it, and then they had Ed Solomon come in and do a rewrite and try to make it funny and add jokes, or the reverse of that. I'm not really sure. It's very confusing and disjointed. But like this movie had like a ton of scripts that they just kind of like literally like rip them up and like tape them together, and just there was no coherency throughout the process from what I could understand.
Sure. You watch this movie and that makes sense. Yeah, that's exactly what this movie feels like.
Yeah. I'm torn. Like I wish from me, I don't have the same nostalgia for this. Like there's plenty of movies that I have nostalgia for that I know probably aren't good movies, but I still like feel something. This, I feel nothing. I feel dead inside when I watch it. But I do appreciate how, that it is a weird kind of one of a kind movie. I just wish it was weirder in a way. I wish that the performances were more gonzo and out there, especially from Dennis Hopper.
Like, I could see that.
Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, two iconically non-Italian actors who are playing Mario and Luigi, don't really give me much at all. Like Leguizamo's doing something. I don't like it, but he's doing something, I guess. Bob Hoskins not really giving me anything. Great actor, but I don't know. Just I can understand his resistance to like giving much thought to this performance, but it's just kind of boring. I don't
So,
know.
it's so funny to me that you say that because I actually feel like Leguizamo's just doing like generic early 90s Leguizamo character. Like he's not
Yeah.
that vastly different from like the movie Pest or some other things that are sort of, again, just generic Leguizamo. He's like, I'm funny, I make voices and I talk weird. Like,
Sure.
Hoskins, to me, it is like a travesty that he didn't get to play a real Mario character because I feel like he is leaning into the over the top, probably past borderline offensive stereotype of an Italian person. but like that's kind of what Mario is, and he does that, and then he does it well, and he brings it gravitas, and like I buy him as a real gritty Italian plumber. I don't buy them as related, but I guess that's why they had that weird.
No,
We're gonna throw
no,
this.
I
We're gonna
don't.
throw this storyline in. Like, apparently Luigi was also an orphan, and that also this bleeds so much of like they had no reason why Daisy and Leguizamo, Luigi, should be connected or have any sort of romantic entanglement whatsoever. So they were like, I mean, we don't have, like, there's no explanation for these two to like each other. There's also, we got these two stars that look nothing alike. I mean, these dudes definitely did not come from the same family. So you know what? Let's just kill two birds with one stone, all right? And we'll go ahead and we'll have an explanation that, Luigi, he became adopted by Mario, and that's why they don't look alike. But that'll explain it. Any further explanation as to Luigi's backstory? Any further explanation as to why this random New York plumber would have taken in a kid? Nope, none whatsoever. But
Unnecessary. Don't need it. He's the Batman. It's like Batman and Robin.
yes, it's like Batman and Robin.
How Bob Hoskins prepared for this role, according to the Guardian article, this is a quote. How do I prepare for the role? I'm the right shape. I've got a mustache. End quote.
He's not wrong. I heard somewhere as I was kind of looking up fun facts for this that he supposedly had never heard of the video game, had no idea that the movie he was in was based on a video game until he was like reading the script, coming back from it, and his kid said like, "Oh, I know what that is," immediately, and showed him.
I heard that. I don't know. This wasn't in the. I don't know. I think that might be bullshit. That might be legend. I've heard that too. I don't know. I think because he's got kids. His kid was like, this article says that his kid was playing Mario. His kid was depressed that he was playing Mario, I guess for whatever reason. I don't know. I find it unrealistic that he didn't know he was in a movie based on video.
Somebody had to have pitched it to him, right? Like that has to be why you take it.
Yeah, and the big dump truck of money that's backing up to your house.
I genuinely hope that they paid him so well he just never had to work again, because the terrible nature of this movie led to him basically never having a major lead ever again, which is very sad. So because this is after Who Framed Roger Rabbit, right?
Is that true? I'm looking up.
Maybe I misspoke.
Oh yeah, by like 6 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say because Roger Rabbit was late 80s, which, at least in the United States, because Hoskins continued to work, I know, in Britain, and and was, I'm sure, working before this, but in terms of like big budget Hollywood types of things, he's not.
He never had like.
He's never a leading man
like
again.
Leading roles.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking at like Enemy at the Gates. That was a cool movie.
Oh, I forgot he was in that.
He was in Beyond the Sea, the movie that Kevin Spacey directed, where he played Bobby Darin from age like 20 to 60 or something insane. I don't know.
Sure, yeah, because that's a movie that we all know of.
Yeah, I don't know. He's in a ton of stuff. He's in Snow White and the Huntsman, which I never saw, but apparently he's in that.
Don't. I did see that.
No,
don't see that.
I won't. I saw the sequel for some reason, but I didn't see that one.
I seem to remember liking the sequel more, and I can't remember as to why I watched it after I watched the first, because woof.
Yeah, woof indeed. But yeah, like just I mean, we're kind of like speaking around the fact that like this movie has absolutely nothing to do with the video games.
Yeah.
And like where they were just trying to do this impossible task of like making a coherent live action story out of something that has no story. And like dinosaurs, there's no dinosaurs in the game as far as I know. They're turtles, aren't they?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, so like they're the Koopas, you know what I mean? But like, if you want to
But
try to
they're
make
not.
them
Yeah,
dino type characters, because there's other, yeah, there's other things. And then you got Yoshi eventually in there. I think somebody, yeah, probably was
sure.
like, I see lizards, and
Yeah,
so we'll do that.
yeah. The what is it? God, this movie's just. I just feel like there's a gap in my brain from when I watched this movie. There's like a 90-minute. I
your
can't.
your
I'm
mind
trying to
is like protecting you from it.
yeah, there's like a bubble around this movie. Uh, yeah, there's just like totally invented characters and all that stuff. And I guess that's fine. Like I don't need my movies to be slavish to the property that they're coming from, especially something like this where the property is nonsense. But again, I just didn't find it that interesting or compelling. There's like interesting moments and weird shit in here that I found fascinating, but never good. But then overwhelmed by parts that I just kind of found boring.
I feel like it's definitely one of those movies that like there may be people like me that have nostalgia for it, that therefore I could
Sure.
watch this movie multiple times. I'm not mad that I purchased it for myself, although it
You
was a
did purchase
pain in
it.
the ass to find it. But I'm also was cognizant enough that I was like, I'm not going to make Lorne dig this up or order it from, you know, a DVD somewhere the same as I'm going to. That's not going to happen because it's not. It's.
Do you think Nintendo cares that this movie exists? Like, do you think they've tried to bury it? Like, do they
Yes.
not want it on streaming platforms?
Yes.
Yeah.
1000% yes. They would prefer that no one remembered that this movie existed. I truly, truly think that's. I mean, like, it is. It was so poorly regarded, and apparently, I did not know this, but apparently, was like not actually well received even by fans. Like, you know, sometimes you got critics are like, "Oh, this movie's garbage,"
How
but
could you?
fans, you know, it. You know, you watch something like Fast and the Furious, and it's like, but everybody loves it. Still made $1 billion. No, this apparently did so poorly. Like, that's actually part of the reason I think I ended up seeing it when I was so young, because it was one of those movies that like didn't even finish its theatrical window. I don't think it like got pushed out of theaters and then pushed onto home video and other things like that faster than most movies did at the time, specifically because it was just not well received. And it also probably helps that like I first saw this movie as a series of bits and pieces as I kept catching bits and pieces on, you know, HBO or whatever channel, you know, premium channel my parents had something growing up. So to me, the fact that there's no real coherent story is just associated like implicitly with the fact that I watched it in a non-coherent manner. Therefore, it's not upsetting that there is no coherent story. Because to me, it's all just about the like cool scene where you've got this like weird Bertha character that's, you know, wearing all red leather, and inexplicably there's this sort of pseudo-romantic thing between her and Mario. And then there's the cool bomb
Yeah.
scene, and then there's the cool jump boots. Like all of these things that are just cool, you know? Very early 90s
Yeah,
cool.
there was that interesting scene in the club, I guess. Yeah, where he was trying to get the what is he trying to get the egg back or what was he trying to get back from the
The
woman?
necklace. She had the necklace.
The necklace. So Mario had to dance with her and like kind of like pseudo seduce her on the dance floor, and it was to some like remake of or a cover of Love is the Drug by Roxy Music. It was like this weird like garish kind of early 90s version of it. It was like this is terrible, but it is compelling.
Right?
This
You can't
particular
look away.
moment.
You can't look away.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was gonna say, okay, so this movie has dinosaurs in it. Every Dennis Hopper's a dinosaur, all the Koopas or whatever, they're dinosaurs.
Sure, yeah.
This is one of two iconic dinosaur movies to come out in 1993. The other being Jurassic Park, which came out 2 weeks later.
I didn't realize they were that close to each other.
I just looked it up, which is very funny. If only they came out 2 weeks after Jurassic Park, maybe they could have rode the dinosaur excitement coattails all summer.
Maybe instead they had, you know, the T-Rex that Koopa turns into at the end of this movie being compared to the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, and not a fair comparison.
No, when he pops out of the little vat of goo or whatever.
Yeah.
I do kind of remember that.
I
That's kind
also
of neat.
I also love the like completely obvious, like even as like a 6 or a 7-year-old, I remember noticing things in this that were product placement. So it's Nintendo trying to give like a giant commercial for all of the computers in Dino Hatton. They don't use computers, they use the Power Glove. Like you have to like manipulate things with that Nintendo Power Glove.
I didn't even notice that.
Oh yeah, and then
I
did
don't
you notice
remember
the
that.
guns then? The De-Evolve gun?
Were they what were the guns called for the Nintendo? Like the scope
Yes.
something?
Yep. So
I
I
can't
can't remember
remember
the
it.
exact name, but this like Super NES, Super. I think it was called like the Super Scope is what it was
Yeah,
called.
the super scope.
Yeah, and so that was one of those things that was like a ridiculously expensive add-on that you could get that probably only worked with like one, maybe two games.
I
And
remember renting it from like wherever you rented games, like renting that for a weekend or a week or something, and playing some shooter. It didn't work very well. What
nope,
if they had? Oh, that'd be cool if they had like a game genie in it. Like you put the game genie into the computer, and you're like hacking the computer.
that
Oh,
would have been
there's
cool.
like,
I don't think
well,
Nintendo owned Game Genie though. See, and
I
that's
know.
like what's too bad about it is if they had been able to like lean into more of the night just generic 90s gamer stuff, I bet it could have been better, because then it would have been just an absolute nostalgia fest of like here's all these random things that everyone was doing. But they instead only did the stuff for Nintendo because that's who was paying for it. But I think, I don't know this, but let me know, Lauren, if this is maybe something that came up in your Guardian. I suspect part of the reason Nintendo agreed to this is because Nintendo at this time was starting to get their asses kicked by the Sega Genesis. And part of what the advertising campaign was that was beating Nintendo is Nintendo was like the lame console, it was the 70s and 80s console. We're past that. And then at the 90s, as we turned into the 90s, the Genesis was the cool, fast, hip, and their main character wasn't this old-timey plumber. No, their main character was Sonic, and Sonic was hip and cool and rad and tubular. And I think they were trying to like do something to spin their banner character, their major mascot, into having like an edgier, cool side of things. So they put him into this like edgier, very 90s grunge movie, and they thought that would do it. What do you think?
It is a very compelling theory that this article does not really mention at all.
Okay.
And I do think that's probably part of it, and that's why Nintendo probably like latched onto this and like went with it. Was like, oh, we're not as cool as we used to be. Although 1993 was that the Mario Kart year? I mean, I feel like Nintendo was
Oh, they were always
doing
battling, but they were
stuff.
losing in that generation of consoles where the Genesis came out. So
But so from what I understand, this guy Roland Joffe, who's a director, he directed The Killing Fields about the Khmer Rouge massacre in Cambodia. He
okay,
was like, I want to be a producer. I want to like, produce movies. And this Super Mario Brothers thing, this got juice. People love this thing. I want to make a movie out of this. So he get together a team and a script and came to Nintendo and said, hey, I want to make a live action Mario Brothers movie.
oh
And
my
they were kind of
god,
skeptical, but just kind of let them put stuff together and said, okay, if you can bring us a compelling idea, we'll look at it and like let you kind of roll with it. So that's what happened. And he brought in those two directors that did the Max Headroom thing. And I think he was the one, his team wanted to kind of go for this like 90s grungy thing.
okay.
I don't exactly know why they decided on some of that stuff, but it wasn't, I don't think it was Nintendo was like the driving force, at least initially, to like making this happen. But I think once they maybe saw the final script, they were like, we have notes. We have some notes. We have some notes. Why are the Koopas Goombas, or why are the Koopas Koombas, or whatever? Why is it Princess Daisy, not Princess Peach? What does this have to do with Super Mario Brothers, etc., and so forth? So yeah, I don't know, but I'm sure like maybe when they were like, yeah, that's we could make a Super Mario Brothers movie. We could be cool again. This could be huge. This is a huge game. And they probably saw what this movie was turning into and were like, what? No, they got some major cold feet. Rightfully so, because this I think was going to be weird no matter what came out from it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing this movie, I would argue, does do well is finding ways to, sometimes inexplicably, but it does manage to cram in there all of the references to the games. Like, you've got Yoshi is this lovable little dinosaur character, which Yoshi is a lovable little dinosaur character. You've got, all of this is supposed to have happened in like the Mushroom Kingdom. And okay, so there's the evolved king is fungus all around.
Sure.
Because that
It's
makes
like
sense. It's a Mushroom Kingdom. You've got your portal, so they like go into the pipes underneath the earth, and then they portal into another world. So you've got that. Then there's.
Do they go through pipes? They just jump through a wall.
I mean, it was all one giant pipe, though. Like, to get them there in the first place, it was a giant pipe.
Do they go down a pipe?
Sure, it's in the sewers.
They're jumping into a brick wall.
They're like running through the tunnel, the pipe tunnel, and then the portal. Okay, so the portal.
Okay.
Then we've got the guns. We've got the glove. We've got. We've also got fireballs. So like one of the things that often Mario gets to do is throw fireballs. They choose to make the guns shoot fireballs that look very similar to live action versions of the fireballs you throw.
Okay.
You've got,
again, struggling to remember a lot of this.
Bullet Bill. I don't know if you caught this. Bullet Bill was this thing that happened in the games. It's like it looks like a giant bullet with a face on it.
Oh, I know Bullet Bill. Yeah, okay, so we were all friends. We went to school together.
Okay, good. All right. So did you notice that Bullet Bill was the cartridge that they put into their jump boots to make the jump boots go?
No, again, I blacked out for about an hour and 45 minutes. Happened to be overlap with when I watched this movie.
Sure. Okay. Then
I don't remember that. I do remember the Ba-Bomb.
I was going to say the Ba-Bomb. And the last one. So do you know the character Toad from the video games?
Of course. Yeah, I know Toad.
Did you catch that the musical guy that got arrested with them was named Toad?
Yeah, and that it's an actor, like a known. I looked this up
I didn't catch. He was a known person.
I think he's I want to say like a musician from the 70s. Oh, Mojo Nixon.
Sure, yeah.
Ooh, Mojo Nixon. I know that name, but I can't remember who he is. Yeah, he's a musician. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, while you're looking that up, I don't recall clocking when I was younger that this was a Toad character, because of course that character is almost the exact opposite. The actor that they choose to play him
it looks absolutely nothing like Toad.
Well, I mean, is also like is a tall person. He's like taller than Mario. When the character
like
Toad
notably
is
tall. He is notably tall, while Toad is notably short.
Yes, yeah, like, and that's pretty much the only defining characteristic about either of them, because he's also clearly not a mushroom person, and Toad, to the best of my knowledge, is never a musician in the video games.
I think I missed that game where Toad was a rockabilly guitarist with a greaser haircut. I don't remember that.
Oh, it's so bad. So bad.
Yeah, okay, and all the dudes with the small, tiny little heads, were they called Koopas or were they called Goombas? Don't remember.
I think they called them Goombas.
Okay.
Which were like...
Because they look like neither.
Correct. Which is... like, maybe you could kind of argue that they're Koopas, because the Koopas were the turtle characters in the video game, and then, Turtle is kind of like a lizard, and they were kind of like lizard people. But that's another thing. Why is the character that is clearly Bowser named Koopa? What the fuck?
Well, that, I believe, is... I feel like those names are used interchangeably in the games, or in certain games he's called King Koopa, and in others he's called Bowser. Both of those games are canonically from somewhere in the Super Mario Brothers timeline.
Okay.
They do both get used, and they are referring to the same dude.
Well, yeah, it does
As
feel
for
like
why he's a human, I don't know. Because he's
well,
not a human.
because he's Dennis Hopper, and that's because Dennis Hopper was probably like, I'm not putting any makeup on. I'll let you gel my hair.
And also probably really fun to work with.
Oh my God, he had to have been so much fun to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
what a joyful man.
He and and then also Hoskins for me is good, but I also just think it's hilarious. Like, there are some genuine things to love in this. Like, just some of it's just very like bullshit 90s, but like the physical comedy in this to me was very funny. The two characters, Iggy and Spike, I loved them. Loved their story. Now, I clocked at some point, I was like, when did they switch sides? Because some point after they're chasing the Mario brothers, maybe you've caught this, but you blanked out on the movie, so probably not. I have a note of like, I love them being idiots. I love them being over, like, literally one of them says like, we're looking for Daisy, Princess Daisy, you know, oh, it's gotta be her. She's got 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. Like, that's obviously her. Or then when they get re-evolved or whatever and like made smarter, they're actually still just as ineffectual and stupid. And the only difference is that they use bigger words. Like,
yes. Yeah, that was kind of a cute moment. Yes. Some fun little character detail there. Like, they talked a bigger game that did just the shit they did was just as dumb.
I wrote down that I think they were my favorite part. Like, but it is that kind of just absurdist, doesn't rely on there needing to be any real story. It's just their two interactions. Like, whatever they're doing, it doesn't matter what's going on. They're fun to watch.
So also from this article, like, they quoted from Richard Edsel a lot, who played Spike.
Okay.
Or Richard Edson, I'm sorry, who played Spike, who you probably would recognize. He's been in a lot of shit, but Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the sleazy parking garage attendant.
Oh, I did not. Oh no, so you're thinking of Spike, because
that's Spike.
Spike. I was thinking of Iggy. Yes, I recognize.
Iggy is Fisher Stevens. Yeah.
And
Fisher Stevens, Short Circuit. He's on Succession. He's in a ton of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize he's on Succession. Hackers is always the one I think of for him, which is also a very 90s movie.
Yes, extremely. Maybe the most 90s movie. But Richard Edson, they quoted heavily from this. Basically, they were quoting from like 3 people, and he was like the one actor that they got to kind of speak on this, because I'm assuming.
What does he have?
Dennis Hopper and Bob Hoskins are dead.
Right.
They talked to Samantha Mathis too.
Okay.
But he was like, I was just hanging out with Fisher Stevens the whole time, and we realized the script was garbage, and we realized that the writers didn't really care, so we just kind of riffed a lot and just kind of made up stuff on the spot, and nobody seemed to stop us, so we just kept doing it.
So that explains why it's the best part, because it's two good actors having a good time as opposed to garbage
like
writers.
They were having fun. Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
It's good stuff.
So good. So good. Yeah. What were we going to say?
Oh, I was going to say a lot of other good stuff from this. I mean, assuming everybody like hated making this movie. Richard Edson was like, there are some good quotes in here. Let me find it. Hold on. Sorry. What was he saying? Sorry. I'm like doing keyword searches on this. Oh yeah. He was like,
you disappeared.
Like, they rented like houses for everybody. They were in this like beach resort town with their. Oh, sorry. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back now. Go back to what you were first saying. Can you hear me? Uh-oh.
Yes, I can hear you. So Edson was saying it was a beach resort town, each of their own house. Mine had a boat and a basketball court. My family came down and visited. We would hang out a lot and get stoned. Bob Hoskins would never hang out. He had a mansion somewhere down the beach. But then one night we were talking about getting high, and Bob was like, "You guys have pot? You've been smoking reefer?" And we were like, "Yeah." And he yelled, "Why didn't you tell me? I've been sitting alone in my mansion." So they were all scared. They were all scared of Bob Hoskins and afraid to ask him to come down and smoke pot with them.
And instead they were like, "Oh, he's never joining us." But the moment that they realized he would have joined them, of course he does.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of fun. I don't know.
That does sound like fun.
Yeah, but this kind of it's just a total disaster of a movie that people tried to make their bet. It feels like, it definitely like feels like everybody that's making it feels like they knew this movie was going to be a huge disaster.
Which is so funny to me because
For sure.
they still let them put that odd button on the very end that clearly was expecting a sequel. Like,
oh yeah, we all wanted it. We were begging for it.
I want to know what possible story they could come up with where in the span of what seems like only a matter of days or weeks at most, she, having just gotten her father back, comes to them and it is like all hell has broken loose. She's like, you'll never know what just happened. She's covered in dirt. She's coming like she just came out of a war zone. And so like they're blissful, new, they, just took over, and now all of a sudden 3 weeks later, like at this point I'm like, I don't know, maybe we should just let this universe, die out. Like these dinosaur people can't clearly function well enough. But
let it devolve into goop. Just like Daisy's father. We didn't say Daisy's father was goop. He was a big ball of goop. And then he turned into Lance Henriksen.
And that's another thing that they had to have thought they were going to get a sequel that was going to have him in it, because you don't throw in someone like Lance Henriksen at the end there to not have it be a thing.
I thought it was maybe just like a fun cameo. I don't know if they were banking on like having the next movie be based around Lance Henriksen. I don't know. I feel like back then, like it's not like now where like it's Marvel, like they're planning like 4 movies ahead and they're casting these big actors in these small roles because they know they're going to have a bigger role later. I don't think they were thinking that then.
You might be right.
Let's just try to make this one. And hey, I know Lance Henriksen. We can get him on set for a day and work for scale.
You might be right. I mean, it would have taken a half a day to film what they had with him. So
yeah,
I
don't know.
That weird part too. That's just one other note to start wrapping things up, I guess. I mean, there's just no rules developed for this world building. Like, it could have been so cool. They had there was the potential of a very inventive, very unique world, but they just didn't stick to any of it. Like, why just because King Koopa has been de-evolved into goop would suddenly her dad, the other King Koopa, presumably, I don't know what his title is, re-evolve into a person? Like, there is nothing. In my brain, apparently from my memory of this movie, I thought that they've like flipped a switch somewhere, or there was like an extra small scene where they went back to see him. No, it literally is like we cut from, yay, we're celebrating in the streets, to dad comes back from being a mushroom, and there's no explanation as to how or why that happens. Like, what?
I wish I could tell you. I really do. My deepest wish is to tell you why he evolved from goop to Lance Henriksen.
Okay, now one final question then before we can wrap up. We were talking about product placement. You said you did remember Babam.
From this viewing, yes.
Okay. This viewing, when the Babam blows up, right before it blows up, did you catch the Reebok ad?
No.
So the Babam, this is like, how you know movies are bad is when they have like really terribly obvious product placements, because that's the only way they could get the movie paid for. The Babam walks, and then right when it stops before it blows up, on the bottom of its shoes it says Reebok.
Oh, that's cute. That's kind of charming. I don't know.
Charming, yes. Explicable, no. There's
no. Inexplicable is the word, but hey, that's movie magic right there.
There you go.
Babam wears Reeboks. What better ad for Reeboks could you possibly imagine?
Obviously. I mean, again, this movie was so 90s.
Yeah.
Anything else that we need to cover that we haven't yet?
Well, I wanted to say a couple other things. The narrator, which I don't really remember this movie having a narrator. Do you?
No.
But the narrator is Dan I never know how to say his last name. Castellaneta, who is the voice of Homer Simpson.
No shit.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember where there's a narrator in this movie.
I didn't remember there being one until we watched it, but I could tell you it's that cartoon part at the very beginning of the movie.
At the very beginning, that makes sense. Do you remember the cop who shows up periodically in the movie, usually on like TV screens, got a mustache? That's Don Lake, he's just like a fixture of like 90s movies. He still acts today, but he's in all like the Christopher Guest movies. He's in, I think, Uh, uh, he's in a great little comic presence. Just kind of shows up in
Yeah,
these
he's
small
one of
little
those good
roles.
character comic
He
actors.
rules. Yeah, he's funny. And I don't know. I guess my larger thing. I was thinking about this. I was. You're a Star Wars guy. I'm going to
Yes.
make a comparison
Oh
here, which
dear.
maybe is going to sound crazy. I hope it won't sound insulting, but
We'll see.
I think now I have not seen the new Mario Brothers movie yet, and I probably won't for a very long time. From everything I've read about it, it's kind of bad. Really, like just Nintendo has taken full creative control. It's a beautiful looking movie, really well animated, but there's like barely any story, and it's just for Nintendo to kind of link all of their Mario properties together into like the barest semblance of a story. I kind of And then you have this weird kind of borderline gonzo movie from the early 90s where there was very little Nintendo involvement, at least initially, and it was a lot of like creators input and their weird ass ideas. I kind of think of like the Star Wars prequels that George Lucas had total creative control over, which I I'm not a huge fan of, but I appreciate their weirdness. And it's coming from the brain of one guy, and they're kind of weird gonzo movies that if Disney was involved wouldn't look remotely like that. And then you have, the newer Disney movies, which are very kind of corporate controlled, and I like them to varying degrees.
Okay.
But
Okay.
you know, maybe less interesting than the prequels are. Better made, better movies, but are they as interesting? I don't know. And that's how I would kind of look at like Super Mario Brothers movie from 1993. Weird, bad movie, kind of interesting. The new one, haven't seen it. Everything I understand about it, competently made, not that interesting. I don't know.
Okay. I can get behind
I
that.
guess my point is like let people be weird. It might not always be good, but let them be weird. Let their freak flags fly.
I don't know that I agree with that with the analogy of Star Wars. I like a lot of what happened in the prequel trilogies, but I'm with you in terms of they're not the best. And I think it's not and this is maybe I do agree, like corporate America will not necessarily make a good movie. Because it does kind of feel like I haven't seen it either, the new Super Mario Brothers movies. I've heard decent things, but just looking at the cast, and it just feels like, oh, we're doing this cookie cutter thing to generically, sort of program a movie that will be successful enough to make people have a property that can make us more money in the future.
Yes.
The original Star Wars trilogy, the OG, that one I think is a great example of like, because it was independent films, because he was running things, like it was all his ideas at the beginning, but he had other creatives to bounce ideas off of. And this is where like maybe that is the problem for both of these movies is the 1993, it wasn't being done by a corporation, so it wasn't very good, but also wasn't coherent. And so maybe what you need is other creatives to bounce your ideas off of, and it sounds like the duo that was kind of in charge really only had each other, and
It sounds like they didn't really have anybody on their sides. But I guess that's a good point. I guess what I'm trying to say is like if we let things continue on the way they are, movies will never be weird again.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
corporations are just fewer and fewer corporations are taking more and more control and ownership of this massive IP, which is increasingly the only stuff that gets made, and it's going to get more and more boring. And because they're less and less willing to take risks, and yeah, I think you want that balance. Maybe the original Star Wars movies are a good way to put it, like that balance between corporate and weirdo, individualistic, creative impulses that creates interesting stuff that still falls in some kind of like commercial framework. But yeah, when it tips over too far to the one side, you get stuff like Super Mario Brothers or the prequels, maybe.
Okay.
And when it tips too far the other way, it's just boring as shit. And it's just not, it might make a ton of money, but like who's going to remember it in 5 years' time?
Well, if the chief complaint here is that we don't like the way that late stage capitalism is influencing things in the world, including the movies that are being made, you get 100% agreement from me there. So we can end on that note. All right. Well, with that then, movie lovers, Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for being patrons. If you're listening to this, we really appreciate it. So hopefully you enjoyed this conversation, and perhaps you will enjoy future conversations going forward. You can always find me at Nick Loves Movie. That's NICLUV Love. So at Nick Loves Movies, and that's on pretty much every social media that could exist, Letterboxd included. Lorne, where can people find you if they have any questions, thoughts other than here?
You can't. Don't find me. I'm nowhere.
Perfect answer. All right. And with that, everyone, have a good night.
Bye.